Okay, here's a quick video of the final layout of the rear axle and what I had to do to get it equal side to side and space everything out and make sure that there was no side to side movement or play on the rear hubs. So we'll start on the outside, and what we ended up doing is, to back up to the hub, I bought some 3/4 stainless steel washers in order to get the exact, I guess, spacing and location of the tire. So I have two on this side. This is a steel threaded washer or spacer, which worked really well, threaded right on. And then in order to get the proper clearance for the hole in the end of the axle for a cotter pin, instead of using these really deep castle nuts, which I wanted to use, there's not enough thread to do so and still get access to that hole in the axle for the cotter pin. So the original threaded or nylon lock nuts worked perfectly with just enough clearance after tightening this down with a wrench and tightening this down with a wrench. I was able to get the cotter pin in place to lock everything down. And so that prevents the side-to-side movement on the outside of the hub. And on the inside, I had to go in and to fill up this spacing in here, I ended up getting stainless steel 1-inch washers, putting several in so they back up against the hub. Then there's 1-inch locking collar, bronze sleeve or a bearing, and then another 1-inch locking collar, and then the integrated locking collar on the bearing inside the flangette. So it's really bearing, locking collar integrated, locking collar, sleeve, locking collar, stainless steel washers, hub, and then on the outside, washers, which are 3/4, the steel threaded spacer, nut, which is a nylon locking nut, and the cotter pin. There is no side-to-side movement now, and I really don't think these wheels or tires are going to go anywhere. For the brake assembly, the whole reason why I had to get all of these spacers or washers in here in order to space the wheel off was because in order for the brake assembly to clear, specifically here, here, and then the whole arm itself to be spaced off the frame and where the original band brake mount went, I had to get the stainless steel, or excuse me, not stainless steel, but steel spacers that are in here to space the flangette with the bearing inside, to space it off the frame ever so slightly. So it's hard to see, but in there are gray spacers that are spacing it off of the frame. See if we can get it from this side, and you can see it kind of right in there. There's a spacer. So then I got longer bolts, threaded them through. I ended up switching the way I had the bolts. I had the bolt heads on the outside for cosmetic purposes, but it's very difficult to get the nut in through here and tighten it on. So I flipped them around, and it took some time, but it was easier than original to put them on the outside with the nuts on the outside and then keep an eye on them, even though they are locking nuts. So that is now put in place, and then I spaced this brake hub 1/16 of an inch off the backing plate and then locked it down on the axle. The other thing I did too is from the back side of the hub all the way to the outside of the hub, I have a almost full length key stock in there. So instead of just putting in the small single standard key stock, what I ended up doing is I got on Amazon these really long ones, then cut them down, sanded them down, and put them to length exactly for the length of the inside of the hub where the key stock slot is. So now there's a full length key stock inside the hub of that wheel, just to kind of transfer all of the, I guess, the rotational force to the wheel and lock it in place. And then what I did also for the brake hub and the sprocket is I did the same thing, and I cut another relatively full length from here, single piece all the way through, and then through the brake hub and into here. So it's probably a piece about that long that is now a singular piece that's running through, just to reduce the chances of a smaller individual key stock falling off of the hub or sprocket, or falling off of the brake hub. So there's just one piece. And then on this side, the way I had to do this one was a little bit different, because again, keep in mind the flangette is bolted right to the frame. There is no spacer because there is nothing that needs to be cleared on that side, like the brake assembly. So now it is bearing with integrated locking collar, 1-inch locking collar, same bronze sleeve or bearing, and then another 1-inch locking collar butted up right against the backside of the hub. The hub has a full length key stock in it, and it actually backs up perfect to the face, the inside face of this 1-inch locking collar. And then on the outside, I'm using 1 3/4 inch spacer, the same steel threaded bushing, and then the locking nut with cotter pin. So that is the final assembly of the rear axle. So now we are ready to go to mount the engine and line up the chain and lock down that sprocket, and that should be everything. So let me know what you think.